Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Friday, the 5th of February, Caritas appeals for an equitable distribution of anti-COVID vaccines. Iraqi Christians are helped to lay claim to houses and properties taken away from them during the past 20 years. And the Church in Myanmar calls for a day of prayer and fasting for a peaceful resolution to the political crisis gripping the nation. In the Vatican, I'm Linda Bordoni. The Catholic Church's humanitarian umbrella organisation, Caritas Internationalis, has launched an appeal to the international community and especially to the richer nations of the global north to ensure that the COVID-19 vaccine will be made available to everyone, especially to the most vulnerable. Christopher Wells tells us more.
Caritas Internationalis is calling for greater solidarity to ensure that the COVID-19 vaccines are made available to everyone, especially the most vulnerable. In a statement issued on Friday, Caritas notes the access to vaccines around the world has been inequitable so far. The statement points in particular to supply issues that make it difficult for communities in the global south to procure vaccines. Caritas maintains that the current vaccines crisis must be seen in the wider context of the global health situation, arguing that caring for the poor, the minority, the refugees, the marginalized is a moral priority because abandoning them puts the global community at risk. However, as vaccines have become the focus of attention and much hope in the past year, richer nations in the global north, which have largely financed vaccine development, are now waiting for the return on their investment, leading to a kind of self-focus of the north shown in nationalism and protectionism, while the global south, where the majority of the poor live, is left out. In the face of this disparity, Caritas says political leaders must look beyond the interests of their own nations and political groups and recognize that this pandemic is a global human security problem that threatens the whole human family. On the basis of these principles, Caritas is calling specifically for a number of actions, including a meeting of the UN Security Council to address the issue of access to vaccines as a global security problem. They also call for debt remission for the poorest nations, with the funds used to upgrade medical and health systems in those countries, promotion of local production of vaccines in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, and the allocation of financial and technical resources to civil society organizations, and especially faith-based organizations, to assist local communities. Vaccines are a means to respect and save the gift of life, says Caritas. Since every life is inviolable, nobody must be left out. In this crucial moment, says Caritas, we have an opportunity to live the miracle of charity and save the globalized world together. I'm Christopher Wells.
Russia today expelled a number of European Union country diplomats the government claims took part in demonstrations to support opposition figure Alexei Navalny. Putin's fiercest opponent was ordered last week to serve 2 years and 8 months in prison after surviving a near-fatal poisoning attack last year. Moscow's foreign ministry issued a statement on Friday saying the diplomats from Germany, Sweden and Poland took part in illegal protests held in support of Navalny. The announcement came just hours after EU Foreign Affairs Chief Josep Borrell met Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. A Swedish Foreign Ministry spokeswoman has denied that its diplomat participated in any demonstrations. And the United Nations has ordered the deployment of ceasefire monitors in war-torn Libya to provide oversight. As Father Benedict Mayaki reports, the UN Security Council says it expects reports on preparations and practical proposals within 45 days.
The United Nations Security Council on Thursday requested UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres to deploy an advance team to Libya as a first step in sending monitors to observe an October 2020 ceasefire agreement between warring factions in the country. In December last year, Secretary-General Guterres recommended that international monitors be deployed to the war-ravaged country to oversee the ceasefire from the strategic city of Sirte, the gateway to Libya's oil-rich fields and export terminals. Libya has been beset by internal divisions for almost a decade since the ouster and killing of longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi. The country has been divided between the UN-recognized Government of National Accord based in Tripoli and the General Khalifa Haftar-led Libyan National Army based in the east. Hope for national reconciliation grew with a fragile ceasefire agreed in Geneva in October 2020. The agreement called for a withdrawal of all armed forces from conflict lines and the departure of all mercenaries and foreign fighters within 3 months. In the letter to the Secretary General, the UN Security Council said it expects within 45 days to receive reports on the preparations from the advance team and practical proposals for ceasefire monitoring after coordinating with Libya's Joint Military Commission. The Military Commission includes 5 representatives from each of the rival parties. In his December report, the UN Secretary General recommended unarmed, non-uniformed individual international monitors to be deployed under the auspices of the United Nations to Libya. Under the October ceasefire agreement, the monitors are to provide oversight and report compliance on the removal of military forces and mercenaries, the deployment of the joint police force, and the clearance of the remnants of war, including mines. I'm Father Benedict Mayaki.
US President Joe Biden announced today that the United States is to end its support for offensive operations by its allies in Yemen. The nation has been devastated by a 6-year war in which more than 110,000 people are believed to have died. In his first major foreign policy speech, Biden said the war in Yemen must end. Under his 2 predecessors, the US backed a coalition led by Saudi Arabia against Houthi rebels in Yemen. The conflict has left millions of Yemenis on the brink of starvation, causing a situation that has been described as the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. Fighting began in 2014 between a weak Yemeni government and the Houthi rebel movement. It escalated a year later when Saudi Arabia and 8 other Arab states, backed by the US, the UK and France, began airstrikes against the Houthis. Biden also announced other changes to US foreign policy, such as a significant increase in the number of refugees accepted by the US. A campaign is underway in Iraq to help Christians lay claim to houses and properties which had been taken from them over the past 2 decades. Thousands of Christians lost their homes after they were forced to flee violence and unrest. Devin Watkins has the story.
Some 38 illegally expropriated houses and lands in Iraq have already been returned to their legitimate Christian owners. The effort forms part of a campaign promoted by a prominent Shia politician and cleric Muqtada al-Sadr, leader of the Sadrist movement. The announcement was made by Hakim al-Zamili in a statement issued to Iraqi media outlets and reported on by Fides news agency. In his statement, Zamili said a large portion of the returned property had been illegally expropriated from Iraqi Christians and Mandeans by local militias, armed groups, and influential families. According to the statement, the campaign's goal is to re-establish justice and put an end to infringements on the property rights of, quote, our brother Christians, even if the perpetrators were members of the Sadrist movement. Christians who have fled abroad are also welcome to put forward their cases. The theft of Christian-owned property began after the fall of Saddam Hussein's regime in 2003 as militia groups sprung up in the power vacuum. Fides news agency says the legalized theft of property is closely connected to the mass exodus of Iraqi Christians. Corrupt officials often teamed up with individuals and criminal groups to carry out the operations. The Sadrist movement, which holds 34 seats in Iraq's parliament, set up an ad hoc committee at the start of 2021 to collect and evaluate petitions from those whose property has been stolen. At the time, Chaldean Patriarch Cardinal Luis Rafael Sacco thanked Muqtada al-Sadr for the initiative that seeks to put an end to injustices suffered by Christians. I'm Devin Watkins.
In related news, more than 3 years after the devastating battle to reclaim the Iraqi city of Mosul from the group calling itself the Islamic State, its old city still lies in ruins. But a project with the title Reviving the Spirit of Mosul has hired locals of all faiths to work together to rebuild the landmark Al-Nuri Mosque and the historic Al-Sa and Al-Tahira churches. Pope Francis plans to visit all three sites during his apostolic visit to Iraq in March. And Myanmar's Catholic Church is urging its faithful to observe a day of prayer, fasting and adoration on Sunday for a peaceful resolution to the nation's crisis triggered by the February the 1st military coup. Robin Gomes tells us more.
The Catholic Bishops' Conference of Myanmar, CBCM, and religious congregations from the country's 16 dioceses have called for a day of prayer, fasting and adoration on Sunday. The clergy are urged to say masses on February the 7th with the intention of bringing peace in the country and to appeal to all Catholics to take part in special prayers, fasting and adoration, said a statement signed by Auxiliary Bishop John Saw Yohan of Yangon, General Secretary of the CBCM. Myanmar's military seized power early 1st February after detaining the nation's leader Aung San Suu Kyi, President Win Myint and other democratically elected leaders. The coup came after days of escalating tension between the civilian government and the powerful military, which claimed that the November general election won by the NLD was fraudulent. The CBCM has also asked bishops to highlight in their homilies the recent appeal of its president, Cardinal Charles Bo of Yangon, to the people of Myanmar, the military and the international community. In the February 3rd appeal, Cardinal Bo pointed out to the military that allegations of voting irregularities could have been solved by dialogue in the presence of neutral observers. He regretted that a great opportunity was lost, and many leaders of the world have condemned and will condemn this shocking move. Let us solve all disputes through dialogue, urged Cardinal Bo, who is also president of the Federation of Asian Bishops' Conferences. He condemned the coup and called for the release of all detainees, including Suu Kyi. While appealing for calm and avoiding violence, he stressed that the common good can be achieved through love, truth, justice, peace and reconciliation. Myanmar, also known as Burma, has suffered long under the rule of an oppressive military junta from 1962 to 2011. During the nearly 5 decades, almost all dissent was suppressed with gross human rights abuse, which drew international condemnation and sanctions. A gradual liberalization began in 2010, leading to free elections in 2015 and the installation of a government led by Suu Kyi the following year. I am Robin Gomes.
And the civil disobedience movement in Myanmar is gaining momentum, with teachers and students protesting against Monday's military coup. Demonstrators at a university in the biggest city, Yangon, today chanted support for jailed leader Aung San Suu Kyi and wore red ribbons, her party's colour. Suu Kyi and other leaders have been held in detention since the coup on Monday. Although she has not been seen in public since then, she is believed to be under house arrest. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Vatican and World News. You can join us again tomorrow at this same time for more. Meanwhile, for these and other stories, you can visit our web portal at www.vaticannews.va. You can also like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. My thanks go to Adriano Vitali in studio. In the Vatican, I'm Linda Bordoni. Bye-bye.